everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Leighanne and I talk about books. Today we're going to be doing a single book review. I have only actually done one single book review ever, and I really want to try my hand at this again just because I want to get better about talking about books. I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit all over the place. I feel like, having my thoughts a little bit more together, especially in terms of wrap-ups. I won't be doing them all the time, but it is something that I feel like is going to help me. Also, the book that I'm going to talk about today, I just really, really loved, and there's a lot of things that I wanted to talk about. So the book that we're going to be talking about today, if you didn't pay attention to the thumbnail, is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a new to me author. I had never read anything by this author, and this was a really good book. I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. So a brief synopsis about this book. Evelyn Hugo, she is a famous actress. She is planning her memoirs. She is known for her beauty as well as her many marriages. And she has chosen Monique, who is a not very well-known journalist, to pen her story after her death. Come to find out, Evelyn had actually specifically requested Monique to do this for her, and it was under the guise of something completely different. So as a reader, we're like, I wonder why Monique was chosen to do this particular task. I definitely got a old Hollywood vibe whenever Evelyn was talking and whenever she was, talking about her life. Think, like Clark Gable and Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey Hepburn, Katharine Hepburn, all of those types of stars. That is definitely the vibe that I got when reading this, and so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So as Monique begins to interview her for these memoirs, her biggest question is, out of your 7 husbands, who is the love of your life? And come to find out, the love of her life was someone else entirely. But we'll talk about the specifics of that a little bit later in the video when we get to the spoilery parts. So I was absolutely enthralled with the old Hollywood vibe, which I already said, and with just the character of Hugo herself. She was really portrayed as ruthless, and she was willing to do whatever she needed to do to get to where she wanted to be in life. And I found that to be very admirable in a certain respect, especially because during that time period, it was fairly uncommon. However, that could be viewed as a double-edged sword. And as she tells her story, she is extremely self-aware. One of the things that she says multiple times is, I am not a good person. Don't write me out like I am a good person. I have done things that were harmful to other people. So her self-awareness is something that is very admirable. And I think, especially because of her level of stardom, she could have been portrayed as, something very different, somebody very into herself, and she wasn't that at all. There's a lot of commentary within this book about the roles of women and especially during that time period, and that I did really enjoy. There is a lot about how Evelyn herself had to use her body to get to where she needed to go. And honestly, I just felt like that was really relevant, especially even today, especially considering a lot of the things that are currently going on in Hollywood. Now, this was published before all of that came to light, so I feel like this was kind of a right place, right time type deal. You have this character, Evelyn Hugo, she was overtly sexual. This was something that wasn't necessarily frowned upon, being overtly sexual, but, women were definitely criticized during that time period for those types of things. As women, when we recognize our own sex appeal, when we use that to get what we want, we're called bitches, we're called whores, whatever. And that is something that, while true then, is also still true today. In the end, she really denied her heritage and her happiness and gave her body to men that she didn't love in order to gain success and to get to where she needed to be in life. And I still feel like that's a common thing nowadays. I feel like we are getting to the point in society where we are more willing to recognize people for who they are, whether it be their sexual orientation or their nationality, the color of their skin, what have you. I definitely still feel like the commentary on that is still very relevant today. Sometimes people have erased parts of themselves just to be successful, and that's something that's really sad about society. So in addition to all of the social commentary, we do have a pretty diverse cast. We have Evelyn herself, who is actually part Cuban. We have Monique, who is biracial. She half black, half white. And there are also several LGBT characters within the text as well. Though to my knowledge, none of those things are written in own voices, I do feel like they were written well. Another thing that I loved about this book was how it explores different relationship types, from romantic relationships to just friendships, and how we love and support one another in those ways, and how those people can really become more family to us than our own blood, and that just because you share blood with somebody doesn't mean anything. As we really go through the story and we learn more about Evelyn's life, it becomes more and more intricate, and I was so involved in the relationships and so involved with the characters that I didn't see the reveal that happens at the end of this coming, which is saying a lot because that is usually something that I can pick up pretty early on. I knew something was coming just because a couple of things that had happened, but at the point that it is revealed, I was just so into what was happening that I never even guessed what it was. So as I'm reading this, I'm literally yelling because I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. This is a book that is truly character driven, and it's beautifully written, and I loved almost everything about it. So I gave it 5 stars, and I highly, highly encourage you to pick this book up if you haven't already. So now we're going to talk about spoilers. So if you haven't read this book yet and you don't want to hear anything about the spoilers, then give yourself a few minutes to click away, click away, click away, click away right now. Okay, so I'm assuming you've had enough time to click away. So at this point, if you're still watching and you're spoiled, it is not my fault. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier was there are several LGBT characters within this book, and I thought that that was handled really beautifully. The biggest question that we're asked during this entire book is, who was the love of your life? She was married 7 times, so it's like, which one of those husbands were the love of your life? Turns out it wasn't any of her husbands. The love of her life was actually one of her best friends and fellow actresses, Miss Celia St. James. And through this revelation, there is this conversation that happens surrounding the fact that Evelyn married men, but the love of your life was a woman. And so Monique makes the mistake of saying, oh, so you were a lesbian. And Evelyn gets really upset about that because she's not a lesbian. She did have love and feelings for some of the men that she married. And Monique jumped directly to lesbian without even thinking of the fact that Evelyn could absolutely be bisexual. And there is this entire conversation surrounding how bisexuality is erased. And to so many people, it is very black and white. You're either straight or you're gay or lesbian or what have you. And people often forget that you can have love for more than one gender. So the entire conversation surrounding that I thought was very well done. It really talked about how you can't just stuff people into, one little box. There's always much more to a person than, just that one thing. This whole entire conversation also ties in with the reveal at the end. As it's revealed why Evelyn chose Monique to write her story, we really learn their connection, and I won't explicitly discuss that connection just because, but it definitely does reiterate the complexity of human relationships and the complexity of sexuality, and really how love at the end of everything transcends everything. So as far as the 7 husbands go, I feel like each of the 7 husbands definitely served a purpose. And the first 2 husbands that we meet are strictly to get her somewhere, to get her where she needs to go. Although she did actually end up loving one of those husbands. I do think that if I had to pick a favorite husband that she had, it was definitely Harry. And their entire marriage was a complete sham because Harry was also gay and Evelyn was in love with Celia, and they figured out a way they could preserve their image, because when you think about the time period that this takes place in, homosexuality or bisexuality or whatever was absolutely career ending. So they found a way they could be together with the people that they loved while also preserving their career. Now, it is really sad that they had to do that to begin with, but I love that the characters did get that time together, that time where they kind of had it all. And I also just loved Harry because Harry was Evelyn's biggest supporter. He would have done anything for her, hence, why they got married. And again, just talking about how much they really loved each other. And I think that he was really one of the only men to truly love her for who she was, because he wasn't caught up in her sexuality. He wasn't caught up in her success. He loved her truly for who she was. And even though they didn't share any kind of romantic love, I appreciated the fact that she did get to experience that within her life. Someone that loved her so completely, especially after her past and the family that she came from. One of the other things that Reed does throughout the book is, you know, as Evelyn is telling her story, there are these clips from different tabloids, you know, regarding the different things that are going on at that point during the story. So, you know, at one point talking about her divorce from Don Adler, or, you know, who she's hanging around with, or, you know, just various things like that. And I thought that that was an interesting touch, because you're seeing what the tabloid is printing, and then you're seeing the actual story told from Evelyn's perspective. And I thought that was just very interesting, because it shows how easily manipulated the outside world could be, and especially in terms of celebrity. And it was one of those things where it made me think, you know, of all the things that are posted every single day and all the different tabloids that are printed every single day, how much of it is really true, or how much of it is like a put on? Did they orchestrate these stories like Evelyn did? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's just something that crossed my mind, something that I thought was really interesting. You know, there were several instances within the book where they were dealing with a particular situation, and in order to preserve their own privacy, they were like, okay, well, we'll tell the tabloids this, and then we'll get them to leave us alone, you know, so that their reputations and things like that wouldn't be destroyed. I thought that was really interesting. So overall, I really, really loved this book. I loved the reveal at the end. I loved the complexity of the relationships, and just overall what this book said about love and acceptance and things of that nature. It was definitely one of my favorite books of last year, and it was one of the last books that I read. So I was extremely surprised that one of the last books that I read ended up being one of my favorites. I absolutely loved it. If you haven't read this book, I highly encourage you to read it. I definitely want to pick up more by this author, just to see what else she can do. So that is all I have for you guys today. Have you read this book? What did you think about it? You can comment down below and talk about it. Just make sure to keep it spoiler free for those that have not read it yet. If you do want to talk spoilers with me, you can send me a direct message on Twitter, Goodreads, Instagram, wherever you choose to send me a direct message. I would love to talk about this book with somebody else who has read it. As always, all of my social media links can be found in the down bar below. If you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you click thumbs up or hit subscribe if you have not already. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.